Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair on the bridge of the USV Thunderbolt. The ship was on patrol duty in the outer rim of human space. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, and Jake was reading reports about mining operations and trade routes. Nothing exciting ever happened out here, which was exactly how Jake liked it. The Thunderbolt was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and well-armed. Jake had been its captain for 3 years, and his crew knew their jobs well. They worked together like a family, and Jake trusted each of them with his life. Lisa Wright sat at the communications station. She was young, but very good at her job. She could pick up radio signals from halfway across the galaxy if she needed to. Today she was listening to the usual chatter from merchant ships and mining platforms. Nick Harper was Jake's first officer. He was older than Jake and had more experience, but he never tried to take over. Nick was the kind of man you wanted beside you in a fight. He was reading through supply reports when everything changed. The emergency alarm started screaming across the bridge. Red lights flashed everywhere. Lisa's hands flew over her control panel as she tried to find the source of the signal. "Captain," Lisa called out, her voice tight with excitement. "I'm getting an emergency transmission. It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Jake sat up straight. Kepler 442 was 3 days away at maximum speed. It was a small system with a few mining colonies and research stations. Nothing important enough to cause an emergency. "What kind of transmission?" Jake asked. "It's not using our standard codes," Lisa said, frowning at her screen. "The signal is weak and breaking up. Captain, it's not coming from any human ship or station." Nick looked up from his reports. "Aliens?" Jake felt his heart start beating faster. First contact with alien species was still new for humanity. They had only met a few peaceful races so far. Most aliens seemed to think humans were dangerous because they came from Earth, which other species called a death world. "Put it through the speakers," Jake ordered. The bridge filled with static and strange noises. Then they heard a voice speaking in broken English. The voice sounded scared and desperate. Behind it, they could hear explosions and screaming. "Please. Human ships. ... We know you are out there. We know you are strong fighters. Our world is dying. The Vex Collective has come to our system. Our defenses are failing. We have tried everything." The voice paused, and they could hear more explosions in the background. "We are the Zephyrian people. We offer technology, resources, anything you want. Please help us. We have heard stories of human warriors. ... Please help us." The transmission cut to static, then silence. Jake stared at the speakers. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders. He had heard of the Zephyrians before. They were a peaceful people who lived on a beautiful world with floating cities and crystal forests. Human diplomats had met with them only 6 months ago. Lisa tried to re-establish contact, Jake said. Lisa worked at her controls for several minutes, then shook her head. "Nothing, Captain. The signal is gone." Amy Foster looked up from her scanner station. She was the youngest member of the crew, but she had sharp eyes and quick hands. "Captain, I'm picking up ship signatures in the Kepler 442 system." "A lot of them." "How many?" Jake asked. Amy's face went pale. "At least 200 ships, sir. Maybe more. And they're not Zephyrian designs. These ships are big, and they're moving in attack formations." Jake felt cold.
Ow.
200 enemy ships against whatever defenses the Zephyrians had would be a massacre, sir, Nick said quietly. "The Thunderbolt is just one ship. If there really are 200 hostiles in that system, we can't fight them all." Jake knew Nick was right. The Thunderbolt was tough, but it was not a miracle worker. Even if they managed to destroy 10 enemy ships, there would still be 190 left to kill the Zephyrians. But Jake could not get the voice out of his head. The fear in it, the desperation. Someone was dying, and they had called humans for help because they thought humans were strong enough to save them. "Lisa, send a priority message to Fleet Command," Jake ordered. "Tell them we have a Code 7 situation in the Kepler 442 system. Unknown hostile force attacking Allied civilians. Request immediate support." "Yes, sir," Lisa said, her fingers flying over her controls. Jake turned to Amy. "Foster, scan for any human ships within jump range. Military or civilian, I don't care." We need every ship we can get. Amy nodded and started working. After a few minutes, she looked up with a small smile. Captain, there's a cargo convoy about 6 hours away. 3 freighters with a destroyer escort. There's also a mining platform with some armed ships about 4 hours from here. Contact them all, Jake said. Tell them what's happening. Ask. For volunteers? Nick frowned. Sir, cargo ships and mining vessels aren't warships. They'll be destroyed in minutes against real military ships. Jake stood up and walked to the front of the bridge, looked out at the stars, thinking about the scared voice in the transmission. Nick, do you remember the stories our grandparents told us about the old wars on Earth? About how ordinary people became heroes when someone needed help? Yes, sir. The Zephyrians called us because they heard we were strong. They called us because they thought we would help strangers in trouble. Are they right? Nick smiled slowly. Yes, sir, they are. Jake turned back to his crew. Lisa, broadcast our message on all human frequencies. Tell everyone what's happening. Tell them the Zephyrians need help, and we're going to give it to them, Sir Amy said. I'm getting responses from the cargo convoy and the mining platform. They're changing course to join us. Good. Anyone else? Amy's smile grew bigger. Captain, I'm getting responses from all over this sector. A passenger liner just volunteered to help. 3 private yachts are asking if they can join us. Even a survey ship that studies asteroids wants to come along. Jake felt pride growing in his chest. This was what made humans special. When someone asked for help, they gave it. They did not ask what was in it for them. They did not worry about the odds. They just helped. Set course for Kepler 442 maximum speed, Jake ordered, and send another message to Fleet Command. Tell them this is not just a military operation anymore. This is a rescue mission, and every human in this sector wants to be part of it. Thunderbolt turned toward the distant star system where aliens were dying and calling for help. Behind them, more human ships were changing course to follow. They did not know how many ships they would have when they arrived. They did not know if they could win against 200 enemy vessels. But Jake knew one thing for certain. The Zephyrians had called humans for help, and humans were coming. All of them. As the ship jumped to faster than light speed, Jake sat back in his captain's chair and smiled. The Zephyrians were about to learn something important about humans. When someone asked them for help, they did not send 1 ship or 2 ships. They sent everyone. Admiral Grace Patterson stood in the command center of the USV Leviathan, the largest warship in the human fleet. She was 50 years old and had been fighting battles for most of her adult life. She had seen wars between human colonies, pirate attacks, and the first meetings with alien races. But she had never seen anything like what was happening now. The big screen in front of her showed a map of space around the Kepler 442 system. Red dots marked enemy ships. Blue dots marked human ships. 6 hours ago, there had been only 1 blue dot. Now there were dozens, and more were appearing every minute. Ma'am, said Ryan Cooper, her intelligence officer, we now have 63 ships confirmed for the rescue mission. 4 more battle groups are on their way. They should arrive in about 5 hours. Grace nodded, but her eyes stayed on the screen. She had commanded fleets before, but this was different. Usually when the human military went to war, they planned for months. They studied the enemy, calculated the odds, and made careful strategies. This time, they were making it up as they went along. Ships were coming from everywhere, joining the rescue mission without orders from their commanders. Military ships, cargo vessels, mining platforms, even private yachts with weapons bolted to their hulls. Admiral called Captain Linda Hayes from the communications station, getting reports from all over human space. The news networks are broadcasting the story about the Zephyrian distress call. People are going crazy. Grace looked at the smaller screens around the command center. News reports showed crowds of people gathering outside military recruitment centers. Reporters looked amazed as they tried to describe what was happening. On one screen, a news reporter stood outside Luna Base near Earth. Behind her, thousands of people waited in long lines, trying to volunteer for military service. The response has been incredible, the reporter said into her camera. When people heard that an alien race was asking humans for help, Volunteer centers were flooded. Military bases report that they have more volunteers than they can handle. The reporter turned to interview a middle-aged woman in the crowd. Why are you here? You could be killed in this mission. The woman looked surprised by the question. They asked for help, she said simply. Someone is in trouble, and they called us. Of course we have to help them. Grace switched to another news channel. This reporter was talking to a group of college students who were trying to join the Space Marines. We've never met these Zephyr aliens, one young man said. But they heard about humans and thought we were strong enough to save them. Really can't let them down. But the odds are terrible, the reporter said. There might be hundreds of enemy ships. A young woman stepped forward. So what? If someone calls for help, you help them. That's what humans do. Grace turned away from the screens. She had been in the military for 30 years, and she thought she understood human nature. But this was something new. These people were volunteering to fly across the galaxy to help aliens they had never met, against enemies they knew nothing about. Cooper, she said to her intelligence officer, what do we know about this Vex collective? Ryan Cooper was a smart man who had studied alien races for years. He looked worried as he read from his reports. Not much, Admiral. We found some old records from other alien species. The Vex seem to be a hive mind. It means they all think together like a colony of insects. They're very aggressive, and they strip planets of everything valuable. How many worlds have they attacked? At least 12 that we know of, ma'am. Maybe more. The alien races they attacked just ... disappeared. No distress calls, no refugees, nothing. The Zephyrians are the first ones to call for help before it was too late. Grace felt anger growing in her chest. 12 worlds full of innocent people, all destroyed by these Vex creatures. And now they thought they could do the same thing to the Zephyrians. Ma'am, said Communications Officer Hayes. I'm getting a transmission from Earth. It's from the President. Grace straightened her uniform. The main screen changed to show President Robert Kane sitting in his office. He looked tired but determined. Admiral Patterson, he said. I'm sure you know why I'm calling. Yes, sir. It's a Zephyrian situation. The whole planet is watching this. Grace, every news channel is covering the story. People are calling their representatives, demanding that we help these aliens. My approval ratings have never been higher, and all I did was authorize military support for the rescue mission. Grace smiled. It's not just military anymore, sir. We have civilian volunteers coming from every colony in human space. My staff says we haven't seen unity like this since the colony wars. Grace, I'm giving you complete authority over this operation. Whatever you need, whatever you want to do, you have my full support. Thank you, sir. The President leaned forward. But Grace, I want you to understand something. This isn't just about saving the Zephyrians anymore. The whole galaxy is watching us. If we succeed, every alien race will know that humans keep their promises. If we fail, we won't fail, sir. After the transmission ended, Grace looked around. Her command center. Her officers were all watching her, waiting for orders. These were good people, professional soldiers who had dedicated their lives to protecting others. Hayes, send a message to all human ships and stations, Grace said. Tell them that any vessel that wants to join the rescue mission is welcome. Military, civilian, it doesn't matter. We'll find a job for everyone. Yes, ma'am. Grace turned to her tactical officer, a tough old sergeant named Pete Johnson. Johnson, I want you to start organizing these ships into battle groups. Put the civilians with military escorts. Make sure everyone has a job to do, Admiral Johnson said carefully. Some of these civilian ships barely have weapons. A few. Cargo haulers are carrying volunteers with personal firearms. They're going to get slaughtered. Grace nodded. Maybe, but they're coming anyway. These people heard that someone needed help, and they decided to risk their lives for strangers. The least we can do is give them a chance to make a difference. Over the next few hours, Grace watched as more ships joined the growing fleet. Battle cruisers designed for war flew alongside cargo vessels carrying volunteers. Sleek destroyers, formed up with slow freight haulers whose crews had welded armor plates to their hulls. The most amazing thing was how well they worked together. Military officers shared their tactical knowledge with civilian ship captains. Civilian engineers showed military crews new ways to improve their weapons. Everyone was focused on one goal: saving the Zephyrians, Admiral Ryan Cooper said, looking up from his intelligence reports. "I'm getting some interesting data from our scout ships. The Vex fleet and the Kepler 442 system seems to be slowing down their attack. Why? We think they're detecting our ships jumping into nearby systems. They might be realizing that something big is coming their way." Grace smiled coldly. "Good. Let them worry. They picked on someone who called humans for help. Now they're going to learn what that means." She looked at the tactical display one more time. The blue dots representing human ships now outnumbered the red dots of the Vex fleet. But more importantly, every blue dot represented people who had volunteered to risk everything for strangers. "All ships," Grace announced over the fleet communication system. "This is Admiral Patterson. In 2 hours, we jump to the Kepler 442 system. We're going to show the Vex Collective and the entire galaxy what happens when someone hurts our friends." The response from the fleet was immediate. Hundreds of voices, military and civilian, professional soldiers and volunteers, all speaking as one. "Yes, ma'am." Grace felt pride fill her heart. This was humanity at its best. When someone asked for help, they gave it. When innocent people were threatened, they fought back. And when bullies thought they could attack the weak without consequences, humans proved them very wrong. The Zephyrians had called for mercy. They were about to get something much better. They were about to get human justice. The planet Ethos was the most beautiful world in this part of the galaxy. Cities made of crystal floated in the sky, connected by bridges of pure light. Purple and gold forests covered the land below, and 3 silver moons hung in the lavender sky. The Zephyrian people had built their civilization to work with nature, not against it, but now their beautiful world was dying. Veltar knelt in the ruins of the Planetary Defense Center. He was the leader of all Zephyrian military forces, but his forces were almost gone. Round him, the crystal walls were cracked and broken. Sparks flew from damaged computers. The smell of burning metal filled the air. On the screens that still worked, Veltar could see his world burning. The Vex Collective ships hung in the sky like black clouds, raining death on everything below. Their weapons turned crystal cities into dust and light bridges into falling stars. "Sir," whispered his aide, a young female named Kira. "The quantum transmitters are failing. We cannot send another message to the humans." Veltar closed his eyes. The Zephyrians were a peaceful people. They had never built large armies or powerful weapons. When they heard about humans, they thought these new aliens might be strong enough to help them if trouble came. Now that trouble was here. And Veltar wondered if the humans had even received their message. The stories about humans were strange and hard to believe. Other alien races called them Deathworlders because they came from a planet so dangerous that it should have killed them. Instead, it made them strong. The stories said that humans were warriors who would travel across the galaxy to help strangers. They said humans never abandoned their friends. But maybe the stories were just fantasies. Maybe humans were just like everyone else, too busy with their own problems to help aliens they barely knew. A brilliant flash of light filled the command center. Veltar looked up, expecting to see another Vex weapon destroying more of his world. Instead, he saw something impossible. Space above his planet was tearing open like fabric. Huge human ships were coming through the tiers, their metal hulls shining in the light of Ethos' sun. One ship was so large that it blocked out part of the sky. Weapons covered its surface like the spines of some great beast. But it was not just one ship. More tiers opened in space, and more human vessels came through. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Big warships and small fighters, sleek destroyers and boxy cargo haulers. Military vessels painted in gray and civilian ships in bright colors. Veltar stared at the display screen, trying to count the human ships. There were so many that they filled the sky as people had called for help, hoping for maybe one ship or a small patrol. Instead, the humans had brought an entire fleet. The communication system crackled to life. A human voice spoke in perfect Zephyrian. The words clear and strong. This is Admiral Patterson of the human colonial fleet. Zephyrian vessels. Move to safe distance immediately. We are here to help, and we are bringing some friends. If her words were magic, more tears appeared in space. Even more human ships came through, so many that Veltar lost count. Fighter craft poured out of carrier ships like angry insects, their engines leaving trails of light behind them. The Vex swarm ships had been methodically destroying Ethos's defenses for 3 days. They moved in perfect formation, their hive, mind-controlling every ship at once. They had never faced serious resistance before. Other species either ran away or died quickly. Now they found themselves facing something they had never seen. They were outnumbered. Veltar looked at his tactical display and felt hope for the first time in days. The human fleet was 3 times larger than the Vex swarm. But more than that, the human ships were moving differently than any military force he had ever seen. Military fleets usually moved in careful formations, following orders from their commanders. But the human ships spread out like they were alive, each captain making their own decisions about where to go and what to attack. Some ships moved to protect Zephyrian cities. Others raced toward the largest Vex vessels. A few cargo ships actually flew straight at groups of enemy fighters, their crews apparently unconcerned about their own safety. Admiral Patterson's voice came over the communications again, this time speaking to her own fleet. All human vessels. You know the drill. Protect the innocent. Show no mercy to those who prey on the helpless. Let's remind the galaxy why they call us Deathworlders. Human fleet swept toward the Vex swarm like a wave of metal and fire. The first shots lit up space like fireworks. Human weapons, designed to fight in the dangerous space around Earth, tore through Vex bioarmor like it was paper. But the most amazing thing was not the weapons or the ships. It was the way the humans fought. Veltar watched a small human fighter fly straight through a cloud of Vex bioplasma that should have killed it instantly. The pilot was weaving between enemy shots like he was dancing, its weapons cutting apart 3 Vex fighters before they could react. A human cargo ship, its hull covered with welded metal plates, rammed straight into a Vex cruiser twice its size. The cargo ship was destroyed, but it took the cruiser with it. As the 2 ships exploded together, Veltar heard the cargo ship's crew cheering over the radio. "Take that, you bug-faced monsters," one of them yelled. "Nobody hurts our friends." On another part of the battlefield, a human destroyer was surrounded by 6 Vex ships. Instead of trying to escape, the destroyer's captain ordered his ship to spin like a top, firing in all directions at once. 3 Vex ships exploded before they realized what was happening. "This is Captain Danny Walsh of the USV Hammer," the destroyer captain announced cheerfully. "Any Vex ship that wants to dance, come and get some." Veltar had studied military tactics for most of his life, but he had never seen anything like. This human ships fought like each captain was trying to outdo the others in acts of bravery. They took risks that should have gotten them killed, but somehow they made those risks work. A group of human civilian ships, cargo haulers and passenger liners that had no business being in a space battle, formed up around a damaged Zephyrian city ship. When Vex fighters tried to attack the civilians, they found themselves facing mining lasers and improvised weapons operated by people who clearly had no formal military training but plenty of anger. "This is the freighter, New Boston," came a woman's voice over the radio. "We're just a cargo ship, but we've got a hold full of volunteers and a really bad attitude. Any Vex ship that wants to mess with these crystal people has to go through us first." The Vex swarm tried to adapt to the human attack, their hive mind calculating new strategies. But humans did not fight like a hive mind. Every ship captain made different choices. Every pilot flew differently. The Vex could not predict what the humans would do, because the humans themselves did not know what they would do until they did. Veltar watched a human medical ship, clearly marked with red crosses, fly straight into the middle of the battle to rescue the crew of a damaged Zephyrian transport. Vex fighters tried to attack the medical ship, but 3 human destroyers appeared out of nowhere to protect it. "Nobody shoots at our medics," growled the captain of one destroyer. "That's against the rules of war, and we take the rules very seriously." On his communication screen, Veltar could see dozens of similar scenes playing out across the battlefield. Human ships protecting Zephyrian civilians. Human fighters taking impossible risks to destroy Vex weapons. Human captains making jokes over the radio even as their ships were being shot at. Kira, Veltar said to his aide, his voice full of wonder, "Are you recording all of this?" "Yes, sir," she replied, her eyes wide as she watched the human fleet tear apart the Vex swarm. "Good. The other races in the galaxy need to see this. They need to know what happens when someone asks humans for help." Above them, the battle continued to rage, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Vex had expected to destroy another, helpless species. Instead, they had found humans. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, did not abandon their friends. The space battle above Ethos was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. The Vex Collective had conquered 12 worlds by using their superior numbers and hive mind tactics. They would arrive at a planet, overwhelm the defenses with pure force, and strip everything valuable before moving on to the next target. But today, for the first time in their existence, they were the ones being overwhelmed. Captain Steve Martinez flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire, his hands steady on the controls. His ship was called Luna's Fury, and he had painted a picture of an angry wolf on the nose. His wingman, Kelly Johnson, flew beside him in her fighter called Earth's Revenge. They had been assigned to protect the Zephyrian evacuation ships. But Steve had other ideas. "Johnson, you see that big, ugly ship with all the tentacles?" Steve's voice came through Kelly's headset. Kelly looked at the massive Vex command vessel. It was 3 times larger than any human ship, its biomechanical hull pulsing with alien energy. Smaller Vex ships swarmed around it like children around their mother. "Yeah, I see it," Kelly replied. "Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking." "I'm thinking we should fly down its throat and give it something to choke on," Steve said cheerfully. Kelly sighed. She had been Steve's wingman for 2 years, and she knew that tone in his voice. It meant he was about to do something incredibly dangerous and probably impossible. "Steve, that thing probably has more weapons than our entire squadron. Probably. But it's also the ship giving orders to all the other Vex vessels. If we can take it out, the rest of their fleet might get confused." Before Kelly could argue, Steve's dove toward the command ship, his fighter's engines glowing bright blue. Kelly cursed and followed him. She was not going to let her wingman face that monster alone. The Vex command ship saw them coming. Dozens of bioplasma cannons turned toward the 2 tiny human fighters. Energy beams filled the space around them, each shot powerful enough to vaporize their ships. But Steve and Kelly had been born on Earth, where everything tried to kill you. They had learned to fly in asteroid fields where one mistake meant death. To them, dodging enemy fire was just another day at the office. Steve's fighter spun and twisted between the energy beams, like a leaf in a hurricane. Kelly stayed right. Behind him, her own ship dancing through the deadly light show. Other human pilots saw what they were doing and began following them, turning their attack run into a full squadron assault. Meanwhile, aboard the USV Leviathan, Admiral Grace Patterson watched the battle unfold on her tactical screens. She had commanded fleets before, but never anything like this. Her ships were fighting with a creativity and courage that amazed even her. "Ma'am," reported her tactical officer, Brad Collins. "The cargo hauler New Texas just rammed a Vex heavy cruiser. The crew is requesting permission to board the enemy ship and, quote, show these bugs what happens when you pick on the little guy." Grace smiled. The New Texas was not a warship. It was a freight hauler that carried supplies between colonies. But when the crew heard about the Zephyrian situation, they had welded armor plates to their hull and volunteered for the mission. "Permission granted," Grace replied. "All civilian vessels, you are authorized to engage at will. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Zephyrians, we're sending a message to every bully in the galaxy." On the planet's surface, the battle was just as fierce. Human Marines had somehow managed to land, despite the space battle raging overhead. Sergeant Katie Stone led her squad through the crystal streets of the Zephyrian capital, fighting or running. battle with Vex ground forces while evacuating civilians. Katie's squad was a mix of professional soldiers and volunteers. Some had military training. Others were just ordinary people who had decided they wanted to help. But they all shared one thing. They were not leaving until every Zephyrian was safe. Stone to all units, Katie broadcast over her radio. The civilians are heading to Extraction Point Alpha. Hold this line until every last one of them is safe. Her squad nodded grimly. They had signed up to help strangers, and they were not going to quit now. The Vex ground forces were unlike anything the humans had fought before. They moved like insects, their biomechanical bodies skittering across the crystal streets. There. Weapons fired bursts of acid that could melt through armor, but the humans had something that Vex did not understand. Individual thinking. Each Marine made their own decisions about how to fight. They used the crystal buildings for cover, set traps in the narrow streets, and worked together in small teams that could adapt to any situation. Private Danny Chen, a volunteer from the mining colonies, found himself face-to-face with a Vex warrior 3 times his size. The alien creature raised its acid weapon, ready to dissolve Danny where he stood. Danny smiled and pressed a button on his belt. The improvised explosive device he had attached to a crystal pillar exploded, bringing down half the building on top of the Vex warrior. "That's for trying to hurt innocent people," Danny said, and moved on to help his squad mates. Above the planet, the space battle was reaching its climax. Steve Martinez and his squadron had somehow fought their way to the Vex command ship. Massive vessels' weapons were trying to swat them like flies, but the human pilots were too fast and too unpredictable. "This is Luna's Fury," Steve announced over the radio. "I'm going in." His fighter dove straight toward what looked like an exhaust port on the command ship's hull. Kelly and the rest of the squadron followed, their weapons blazing. The Vex command ship's defenses were designed to stop large warships, not tiny fighters. Steve's squadron flew inside the ship's superstructure, their weapons tearing apart vital systems from the inside. "Kelly, you seeing this?" Steve called out as they flew. Through corridors inside the alien ship, these things built their ship like a hive. Take out the center, and the whole thing falls apart. The human fighters found the ship's central control chamber and unleashed everything they had. Missiles, energy beams, and even their emergency flares, all fired into the alien machinery that controlled the Vex fleet. The command ship began to convulse like a dying animal. Its weapons stopped firing. The smaller Vex ships around it began flying in confused circles, their hive-mind connection broken. "All human ships," Admiral Patterson's voice came over the fleet channel. "The enemy command ship is down. Press the attack. Show them what happens when they mess with our friends." The human fleet surged forward like a pack of hungry wolves. Without their command ship to coordinate them, the Vex vessels began fighting as individuals instead of a unified force. But individual fighting was exactly what humans did best. Captain Walsh's destroyer, the USV Hammer, found itself facing 3 Vex cruisers at once. Instead of retreating, Walsh ordered his ship to charge straight at them. "This is the Hammer," he announced cheerfully. "We're going to hit you so hard your great-grandchildren will feel it." The destroyer's weapons tore through the first Vex cruiser, then rammed the second one before spinning around to finish off the third. Walsh's crew cheered as the last enemy ship exploded. All across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships, both military and civilian, pressed their attacks with a fury that the Vex could not understand or counter. These were not just soldiers following orders. These were people fighting to protect innocents who had asked for their help. The medical ship Mercy, still marked with red crosses, continued to rescue damaged Zephyrian vessels, even as the battle raged around it. When Vex fighters tried to attack the medical ship, 3 human destroyers appeared to escort it. "This is Captain Lisa Brown of the Mercy," came a calm voice over the radio. "We have wounded Zephyrians aboard. Any Vex ship that tries to stop us from saving lives will be destroyed." The Vex fighters tried to attack anyway. They lasted less than 30 seconds against the angry human escorts. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Stone's Marines had successfully evacuated the last group of Zephyrian civilians. As their transport ships lifted off toward safety, Katie looked around at her squad. "Good work, people," she said. "Now let's go help our friends in orbit finish this fight." The tide of battle had completely turned. What had started as a Vex massacre of helpless aliens had become a human rescue mission that was succeeding beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The Vex Collective was learning a hard lesson. When you attack someone under human protection, you do not just fight their military. You fight their entire civilization. 3 days after the first human ship arrived at Ethos, the Vex Collective invasion fleet was nothing but floating wreckage in space. The once mighty swarm that had destroyed 12 worlds was gone, turned into scrap metal and debris by the fury of human warriors who refused to let innocent people die. Admiral Patterson walked through the crystal gardens of the Zephyrian capital city. The floating platforms still hung in the purple sky, their light bridges glowing softly in the afternoon sun. But now human and Zephyrian workers moved together, repairing the damage caused by the invasion. The cost of victory had been high. 28 human ships had been destroyed in the battle. 437 humans had died, both military personnel and civilian volunteers. Each death weighed heavily on Grace's heart, but she knew they had not died in vain. Coordinator Veltar approached her, his blue skin showing the exhaustion of the past few days. Behind him walked several other Zephyrian leaders, all looking at Grace with expressions of wonder and gratitude. "Admiral Patterson," Veltar said, his voice filled with emotion. "We called for help expecting perhaps a single ship, maybe a small patrol. You brought a fleet and asked for nothing in return. Why did your people do this for us?" Grace looked around the garden, watching human Marines teaching Zephyrian children how to play catch with a baseball. A group of human engineers were working with Zephyrian technicians to repair a damaged light bridge. Everywhere she looked, the two species were working together like old friends. "Because you asked," Grace said simply. "Because you were in trouble and reached out to us. That was all the reason we needed." Veltar shook his head in amazement. "But the cost to your people? So many ships destroyed, so many lives lost. And for what? To save aliens you had never met." Grace smiled sadly. "The cost of doing nothing would have been higher. Every species the Vex destroyed made the galaxy weaker. Every world that fell to them made them stronger. It gave us the chance to stop them before they became unstoppable." She paused and looked up at the sky, where human and Zephyrian ships flew patrol missions together. "Besides," she continued, "you didn't call just any species for help. You called humans. And humans don't abandon their friends." News of the Battle of Ethos spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had never heard of humans suddenly knew their name. The message was clear and simple. Attack innocent people, and you would face the Deathworld species that would cross impossible distances to protect strangers. On Earth, President Kane stood before the United Nations Assembly, addressing representatives from every human colony and nation. "The Zephyrian rescue mission has shown the galaxy who we are," he said. "We are not conquerors. We are not empire builders. We are protectors. When someone calls for help, we answer. When bullies threaten the innocent, we fight back." The assembly erupted in applause, but Kane raised his hand for silence. "But we must remember the price of this victory. 437 of our people gave their lives to save a species they had never met. They died because they believed that helping others was more important than their own safety. We must honor their sacrifice by continuing to be the kind of people who answer when someone calls for help." Captain Jake Morrison, whose patrol ship had first answered the Zephyrian distress call, found himself promoted to admiral and assigned to command the new joint human Zephyrian defense fleet. As he sat in his new office aboard the space station that orbited Ethos, he reviewed reports that amazed him. 17 different alien species had made contact with humanity in the past week. Some wanted to establish trade agreements. Others wanted military alliances. Few were asking for help with their own problems. His communications officer, Lisa Wright, entered his office with a smile on her face. "Sir, we're receiving 3 more requests for assistance. The Corlan Republic is having trouble with space pirates. The Theta Colony says their mining equipment is being attacked by some kind of space monsters. And the Andorian Free State is asking for help negotiating a peace treaty with their neighbors." Jake grinned. Looks like word is getting around that humans keep their promises. Plot courses for all 3 locations, right? We've got work to do. All 3, sir. At the same time? Why not? We've got the ships, and we've got the people. If someone needs help, we help them. That's what humans do. As Jake prepared to leave his office, he paused to look at a memorial wall that had been installed to honor the humans who died at Ethos. 437 names were carved into black stone, along with the words, "They answered." The call on the planet below, the rebuilding continued. Human construction crews worked alongside Zephyrian engineers to make the Crystal City stronger than before. Human doctors shared their medical knowledge with Zephyrian healers. Human teachers were learning the Zephyrian language so they could help educate refugee children. Sergeant Katie Stone had been promoted to lieutenant and assigned to train the 1st Joint Human Zephyrian Military Unit. As she watched human and alien soldiers learning to work together, she reflected on how much had changed. 3 weeks ago, most humans had never heard of the Zephyrians. Now, human families were adopting. The Zephyrian war orphans. Human companies were hiring Zephyrian refugees. Human schools were teaching Zephyrian history and culture. Lieutenant Stone called one of her trainees, a young Zephyrian male named Corin. Why do humans fight so hard for people they don't know? Katie thought about the question for a moment. Because someone has to, she said finally. The galaxy is full of bullies like the Vex. If good people don't stand up to them, they just keep hurting others. We fight because fighting is sometimes the only way to protect innocent people. Corin nodded thoughtfully. My people were pacifists before. The Vex came. We thought violence was always wrong. But now I see that sometimes violence is necessary to stop greater violence. That's right, Katie said. The best way to keep peace is to make sure the bad guys know there will be consequences if they break it. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the remnants of the Vex Collective's other fleets were receiving reports about what had happened at Ethos. The hive mind that controlled them was experiencing something it had never felt before: fear. For the first time in their history, they had encountered a species that was not only willing to fight them, but had actually defeated them completely. The humans had not just won a battle, they had destroyed an entire Vex fleet and made it look easy. The surviving Vex commanders began to avoid systems where humans might be present. They started attacking only worlds that were far from human. Space. Some Vex fleets simply retreated to the outer rim of the galaxy, unwilling to risk encountering the Deathworld species again, back on Ethos. Admiral Patterson was preparing to return to human space when Veltar approached her one final time. He said, "My people want to do something for yours. We want to build a monument to honor the humans who died saving us." Grace nodded. That would be appropriate. What should the monument say? Grace thought for a moment, then smiled. It should say, "Here lies the proof that when someone calls for help, humans answer, always," as the human fleet prepared to depart Ethos, leaving behind a garrison and the promise of eternal friendship. One thing had become clear to every civilization monitoring their communications. The humans had answered a call for mercy, but what they had delivered was something far more valuable. They had delivered hope. Hope that bullies could be stopped. Hope that innocent people could be protected. Hope that somewhere in the galaxy, there was a species strong enough and brave enough to stand up for what was right. The galaxy would never be the same. Every species now knew that there were people called humans who would cross any distance, fight any enemy, and pay any price to protect those who could not protect themselves. And for the first time in a very long time, the innocent peoples of the galaxy could sleep peacefully, knowing that if the monsters came for them, they only had to make one call. The humans would answer.